Now we're going to talk about something called equalizing, or EQ as it's commonly known. To do so, we use this little guy, which is called an equalizer. Now what an equalizer does is it manipulates and alters the frequency along the frequency spectrum. You could do it at multiple points or just one point. It all depends on what you're looking for. Now if you remember, a frequency is measured by hertz, or cycles per second. So a higher frequency is going to have more cycles per second, and a lower frequency is going to have fewer cycles per second. Okay? And to get to this EQ, right here we have an EQ8 open. It's very simple. You just go over here, go to Audio Effects, and it's right there. You could just drag this right next to your existing instrument. Okay? So let's talk about the equalizer a little bit. On the vertical axis is the gain, okay, which we see represented here. Now if I highlight the 1, this is representing a certain frequency along the horizontal axis. So if I'm here, and the frequency is represented here also. So if you look at the frequency, you could see it move. We're getting lower, now we're going higher. So if we're here at 85 hertz, and I want to boost the gain at 85 hertz, I'm going to go ahead and either click this gain here and move it up or down, or you could simply click and move up or down. Okay, so again, vertical is going to be the gain, horizontal is going to be the frequency. Say for instance you have an instrument where the sound is producing an unwanted muffled sound around 300 hertz. So around here, where this 2 is. Now you don't want to turn the whole instrument down, you just want to get rid of that mud. Well, you can click here at 300 hertz, and if you want to get more specific, click here. It allows you to get more detailed and pinpoint your frequency. So if we move this down, we want to cut that a little bit. And let's say we're losing too much here and here. We just want to cut out around 300. We can make this way more specific with this nozzle, with this wheel right here. Okay? We're getting really specific to the frequency we want to manipulate. Okay, so how does this sound? We're going to talk about this right now. If I have a note here, it shows up behind on a graph all the frequencies that are firing when this note is played. Okay? So for instance, let's get drastic. If you want to cut out the lows, we could just move the frequency here at 129 hertz down. If we want to get more drastic, we can. And you see that it's losing those lows. Equally, we could do it for the higher frequencies. Okay, and then if you want to find problem frequencies, we can make this really sharp, jam it all the way up. We'll use this one, jam it all the way up, and sweep back and forth and hear which frequency sounds unpleasing to the ear. Might want to take out some of that. And maybe some right there, so you would just dip it. So basically that's an equalizer. We are altering the frequencies by using gain, addition, or subtraction. We can color sounds doing so. Now in a later video we're going to EQ some drums, a drum beat, to show you how we use boosting some lows to really increase that heavy low end kick drum how on some of our higher percussion we can cut out some of the lows, but we'll talk about that in the video we do with drums. All right? All right, so in the last video, we talked about equalizers, we talked about frequencies, we talked about how equalizers alter frequencies. We can add or cut right here. This is our gain, this is our frequency. We can change things, bigger or smaller. Another thing we could do is change the size. We can make it more specific. Really pointy so you can really get specific with the frequencies. Okay, and this is all great. But now let's talk about filters. Probably two of the most common used filters is a high pass filter and a low pass filter. So let's talk about what those are. So come over here, audio effects, audio filter. We're going to drag that over here. It's going to look like that. Now this is basically a mini representation of this. Okay, this is going to be our frequencies, and you can see it gives you the frequency right there. It's about 20 kilohertz all the way down to 26. Okay, so what a filter does is it eliminates certain frequencies. For instance, right now we are on a low pass filter. Now what a low pass filter does, and you can see in the representation, this is what a low pass filter looks like. It allows all the low frequencies to pass through while cutting the higher frequencies. Okay, so here's what it sounds like. We'll just kind of sweep back and forth while we play a note. That's allowing higher notes, higher frequencies in. And now we're cutting high frequencies. Okay, so that's a low pass filter. The other most popular filter would be a high pass filter. It's basically the same thing, but in reverse. So we're allowing all the higher frequencies to pass while cutting the low frequencies. So let's just give a listen to that as we sweep back and forth. Okay. No frequencies are playing under 7 kilohertz. And now we're going to add lower frequencies in. Okay. So that's a high pass filter. This is called a band pass filter. And this is basically a combination of a high pass and a low pass filter together. As you can see, we're only allowing certain frequencies to pass while cutting frequencies in the high range and frequencies in the low range. And you could use this if you really, really want to squeeze down on a sound. Let's say you have a snare drum, you don't want any bottom end, you don't want too much top end. You just want a certain frequency to achieve a specific sound. You could use a bandpass filter. Okay, and this is a notch filter. Basically, this provides a very, very sharp and specific point, or it could be wider, but it's mainly a specific frequency cutter. So let's say you don't want certain frequencies, you don't want 130 hertz, you can cut it right there. It's very similar to over here when we're talking about how you can get very specific. It's just like that. All right, so those are the filters. Basic application for them. Low pass filter. Maybe you have a bass guitar. A lot of low end, not a lot of high end in a bass guitar, so you can go ahead and cut that, leave room for the other instruments that actually do occupy that space. No point in taking up space that the instrument doesn't really use. High pass filter, cut some of the lows. Let's say you have a shaker or a tambourine. Those are going to sit higher up in the frequency spectrum, so you can go ahead and cut some lows to really give it a more clear sound. And a band pass filter, combination of both. Notch filter, very specific filter that cuts frequencies. All right, so those are filters, basic filters, and we'll be using these as we write music in more demonstrations later on. But hopefully you have a better understanding of high-pass filters, low-pass filters, what they do, and how they cut certain frequencies. All right, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Okay, so at some point you're going to have a song or some drums or something that you're going to want to add reverb to. And reverb is what we're going to talk a little bit about right now. So reverb is basically what we're listening to is the reflections of sound off surfaces before it reaches your ear. So if you're in the Grand Canyon and you shout from the Grand Canyon, you're going to hear this big echo. That's because the sound is leaving your lips and it's bouncing off all these surfaces before it's coming back to your ear. Now, if there's no reflections at all, it's just going to hit you right away. You're not going to get that long, echoey effect. Now, the longer the reverb, the longer that delay, that echo is going to be. And the shorter the reverb, the shorter it's going to be. So if you can imagine, if you're in a bathroom, there's reflections going on in there. And there is reverb that we can manufacture to sound like you're in a bathroom. But those are going to be shorter reflections as opposed to standing on the top of the Grand Canyon. So let me just show you what I mean. Right now, we have this little drum loop. All right, so for the most part, it's dry. And what I mean by dry is there's no reverb on it. There's no delay. There's no effects on it. It's just straight up the way it is. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come over here. We're going to go to Audio Effects. And right here, there's a folder called Reverb. Now, if you open it, it gives you a couple options. You could do a hall, which is like a cathedral or a big church. You could do a room, and it has a bunch of rooms, big room, dark room, small room. And then it has some special reverbs. But if you grab the whole folder and drag it down, it'll bring in a basic reverb for you. Okay? So we just grabbed the whole folder, we dragged it down. This is our audio sample. And this is where you drop the audio effects. So we dropped it in here, and I'm going to turn it off. And we haven't messed with any of the settings yet, but let's listen to it one more time, dry or without reverb. Now let's listen to it with the reverb activated. So now you can hear the reflections. It sounds like you're in an environment, like in a big room or down in the subway or something like that. And so reverb is really helpful to add space and life to your mixes. Now, some people overdo the reverb and it can get a little cheesy sounding, but if you find the right one, a little bit goes a long way. Unless, of course, you're going for that huge, over-the-top, echoey sound. But anyway, there's a couple things on this reverb to talk about. If you remember from filters, we have low cut, high cut. So basically, low cut means the low frequency reflections that we're hearing, we're going to cut those, and so we only hear the high frequency reflections. And then the high cut means we're cutting the high frequency reflections and only hearing the low ones. So let's play it, and we'll toggle these around, and you can kind of see, and I mean listen to how they differ. So right now we'll go neither. Low cut activated. You can hear with that the low frequency kick drum is not really getting any reverb, but the snare drum is still getting some reverb. Now if we come down here and we activate high cut, we'll see that okay. And that's basically it for this. We don't need to worry about spin. Pre-delay basically changes the time that the reverb kicks in. So I'll bump this up and you can hear what I'm talking about. Okay. Shape. Little rounder tone. Changing the size will change the sound of it. If you get smaller, it becomes more hollow and tinny. Bigger makes it a more full sounding reverb, so I'll let you listen. Okay. And a lot of this is, you know, it's your personal preference. Decay time is basically how long the reverb continues. Right now we have it cutting off here at 567. If it gets too long, it starts running into each other and it kind of forms this snowball of just sound. And I'll let you hear what that sounds like. See, it's still going. So you want to find a nice balance. If it's a slower song and you have more distance between, let's say you're doing drums, it's a ballad, you have more space in between notes, you can have a longer decay. But if the song's real fast and dancey or something, you're going to want to have that shorter, so you're not getting this big ball of sound. Okay, and I mean, that's basically it. You heard me talk about dry. That's over here, this dry wet knob. If it's all the way to the left, it's going to be a dry signal, as if there's no reverb on it at all. And then wet, we're adding it. Okay, and so as we add it, you could see that the initial signal or the original beat kind of gets quieter. It becomes enveloped with this reverb that we're putting on it. But like I said, I mean, there's an application for everything. So if that's the sound you're looking for, then by all means, go ahead. So anyway, I hope you guys learned something. That's reverb.